Hello, we are live. Dynasty Theory episode number 195. And sadly tonight, John Bauer is not with us. He is supposedly, allegedly, at the Pitt Panthers game. Mitch and I think he's on his couch really watching it because he needed an off night to, get, fresh and ready for the NFL draft or something. But we're happy to be here because it is a free agent frenzy tonight. And I am joined by the man, Dino MC. Mitch, what's happening?
What's going on, man, dude? So, I was complaining a little bit, was it yesterday? All of the free agency was boring. It was defensive stuff and offensive lineman stuff. I'm like, there's nobody that I even want to talk about. But now, I seen the show notes, I'm like, all right, we have more than enough people to talk about now.
It blew up, Mitch. It was because I remember we were on the chat a little bit, and this typical Mitch Sorensen humor. It's like, what are we going to talk about? And JB wasn't going to be here, and then all of a sudden, free agent frenzy definitely gave us plenty of news tonight. And I feel like I pulled a John Bauer with a ton of notes tonight, but we will be concise. And I feel like this episode tonight is going to be a nice, for listeners did miss anything. It's going to be a great overview of the free agent moves and how it shaped up in the last, 24 to 48 hours. But I feel like it's also going to be an episode where, there are those casual fans that are might not catch all this for a while. They could come back and listen to this episode later on, and it's just going to be a blast because there was a big chunk of free agent signings today, and we'll break them down a bit, position by position, see what it means. And Mitch, let's start with the quarterback position. We knew as we try to figure out the quarterback starting landscape, last week's episode, we knew Danny Dimes and Geno Smith re-signed with the Giants and the Seahawks. I think Derek Carr to the Saints was the next big splash. But then in the last 24 hours, we got Jimmy Garoppolo to Las Vegas, which was big. I'm not sure what the difference of Derek Carr or Jimmy Garoppolo is in Vegas. What's your take on the big names and specifically Jimmy G to the Raiders?
I really like Jimmy G going there. I mean, if you have any shares of him on Dynasty, you should be really happy with where he's going because exactly like you said, with him, the difference between him and Derek Carr is very minimal at best. So whatever, if you like Derek Carr going into last season, you should fully like Jimmy Garoppolo going into the season. The biggest worry with him will always be his health. I don't think he's made it through a full season yet in his career. He always misses games, and so that's always worrying. But it's not like I'm valuing him more because I fully believed he was going to get a starting job this offseason. It's just he landed in a great spot. I mean, he landed in a really good spot, and as we'll talk later, they keep adding weapons around him. And if they keep doing that, then I'm more than happy as he's like that late round QB that I'm buying into if I miss out on all the elite guys. Like you brought up, all the other ones, Sam Darnold, Jarrett Stidham, Heineke, Dalton, all these guys are guys that I want to have on my dynasty rosters, but there's never going to be a point where I'm like, you know what? I want to have another Andy Dalton share on my teams. It's just, I'm never going to wake up in the mornings and be excited to go and have them, but there's someone that I'm okay having on my teams because more than likely they'll start a game or two this year.
I'm going to want to get into that a little bit more with you on just kind of the philosophy of drafting, picking up where these backup or potential starting quarterbacks land in our rosters. But if I could touch a little more on Jimmy Garoppolo and Derek Carr, and it sounds to me like you are drinking the similar Kool-Aid that I see JB drinking in the chats. He seems, I don't know if he's hyping up his Jimmy Garoppolo dynasty shares or if he's really liking this landing spot with the Raiders, but last year, we were pretty high on Carr going in, and
you
saw
guys
some upside.
Were technical.
Yeah.
We weren't. You were.
I was. And it didn't quite materialize. And, was that a little bit of, hey, the Raiders' new coaching staff, defense wasn't there, just the adjustment, it just didn't gel. Is it now this year, hey, McDaniels is getting more of his guys and his system in? Are we believing in, hey, they need a new voice in that locker room and it's a McDaniels kind of guy and it works with the system? Is that why you're high on Garoppolo? Or do we think he's better than Derek Carr? Or what has you and JB high on the Raiders?
He's just, his value is a lot lower than what Carr's was going into last season, right? I think Carr going into last season would have cost you, in the 22 draft would have cost you the 107, 108 as far as rookie pick value goes. Right now, I still don't think you need to give up a first for Jimmy Garoppolo. I think you could get him for the 202, 203, 204 in the upcoming rookie draft. And if you could do that, you're going to get a starting quarterback. I'm not planning on him starting any more than 2 years. I mean, if you get 2 years out of that, that's great. But what he brings is I think coaches just love the dude, right? Like it's fairly obvious. They they liked him with the Patriots. The ownership decided no, they want to keep Brady, so they moved Garoppolo, went to San Francisco, and he hung around. And no, he's going to get replaced. He's going to get replaced. They draft Trey Lance, and just ends up Garoppolo just keeps being the guy over and over. So for me, I just think he's one of those guys that's going to stick around to where even after 2 years, maybe he goes somewhere else, and maybe he's an Andy Dalton to where he'll get spot starts here and there, but he's a good depth piece to have. So that's a big reason for me is just how much lower his value is today than what Carr's was at this time last season.
Good points there, Mitch. I think whether we look at it where his value is today, where you can still attain him cheaper than Carr, if you were aggressive enough when the uncertainty was there and went after Garoppolo before he signed with the Raiders, I think you're really happy right now. And I might challenge it a little bit more later in the show when we get to the tight end position, because we talk about his weapons. We got some breaking news today, but we're going to come back to that. As you look at the backup landscape, and there was a lot of money invested in contracts on backup quarterbacks. For me, as I look at a lot of my dynasty rosters, and we play in Superflex, and we like that depth, especially in our 14-team leagues, and I think we're even in a 16-team league. These guys could have some value later on. Sam Darnold, probably the most interesting going to the Niners. Now, I don't know how that's going to materialize. If they go into camp and he completely outplays everybody, they're about winning. I can see them either changing the guard before week 1 or maybe letting Lance falter a little bit and then later on turning it over to Sam Darnold. So if you have the Niners quarterback, and I do have a couple of Sam Darnold shares on my roster, boy, this could be a gem with all those weapons around him, because that offense we know is loaded. I think the only question the Niners have going into 2023 is the quarterback position. So potential gem there in Sam Darnold. And are you in or out on Trey Lance? And where does that leave Brock Purdy?
I think Purdy is the starter if he comes back and he's healthy. I just think he did enough this past season to where he is. But man, I really think Lance is going to end up getting moved for whatever reason. They're bringing in Darnold. I mean, Purdy's going to come back and probably be healthy. If you really trust Lance, why would you be bringing in Sam Darnold? Sure, you like the depth, but it's just a really weird signing for me if you have complete faith that Trey Lance is going to be your quarterback, right? Because let's just say Trey Lance is the more talented player. He should get the start. But Purdy is supposed to be healthy coming back as soon as training camp starts, right? He should be able to throwing by then. Why in the world would you bring in Sam Darnold? And how would you be able to talk Sam Darnold into signing there over other teams he could have signed with? Because I guarantee you there was other teams that were going to be willing to offer him a contract. So for me, I agree. This is kind of like my favorite secondary type of quarterback to talk about, because I do think there's implications there that he had to have wanted to go there for a reason. And maybe that reason is he got some inkling that Lance isn't going to have a long-term future there. I don't know.
And I think our Dynasty listeners and those that are in our Patreon, they have all different mixes of shares of this Niners situation.
Yes.
And I think you answered the question for the Trey Lance owners, in that if they had complete faith, they wouldn't be signing Sam Darnold. So that we know there's risk. Now, I think they have so much heavily invested, having traded up like they did and what they gave away to get Trey Lance, that I think they are going to do everything in their power to help him succeed and hope he makes it. But I think it's a three-headed monster, and may the best man win there in San Francisco. And I think they're a team that's saying, hey, whoever pans out, one of these three is going to pan out for us, and that's all we need. And I think Sam Darnold signing there is saying, you know what? I know it's a little bit of a messy situation. I know there's no guarantees. But boy, if there's anything that's going to resurrect my career, it's I got to beat out a rookie that,
right?
Two rookies really, because they've either been injured or haven't played. There's very minimal experience in that quarterback room other than Sam Darnold. He's got to like his odds and love having that talent around him, coached by Coach Shanahan.
I completely agree. Do you care about Mike White, Taylor Heineke, Case Keenum as far as like dynasty wise, or is this just more of a you're happy on the football side of things that they're actually putting decent quarterbacks besides, behind these starters now?
So I'll give you a rapid fire what I think of each situation. And Stidham, I was probably the most disappointed. And I don't know why. Like, there was just a little part of me that thought he was going to compete maybe for a job there. And it was like just he got him for free at the end of last Dynasty season. So he might be something. But he goes to Denver. And to me, that's just nothing more than insurance for Russ Wilson. So if I have Russ Wilson on any of my rosters, I would want Stidham just to handcuff and protect my investment. Other than that, I'm completely out on Stidham. Mike White to Miami, of all the backups, maybe there's the biggest concern of the quarterback's health in Tua.
Without a doubt. Yep.
And if Tua does get injured or go down or have a reoccurring concussion issue, and I don't necessarily think he will, but there's nothing to say he won't, or the risk is not there based on what we saw last year. It was a scary season for Tua. So Mike White shows he could play with the Jets, should have a better line in Miami to protect him based on what we saw a year ago, and has all those weapons in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So he probably has the most upside of these backups that you want to secure. And if you have Tua, you definitely want to sign Mike White. I think I actually have one or two lineups where I got Tua and Mike White. I got lucky on my dynasty teams, just the way it kind of played out last year. Taylor Heineke goes to Atlanta. I think that's Desmond Ridder insurance. I don't know how confident I'm in that with Mitch. I'd be really interested in hearing your take there. Andy Dalton and Case Keenum, I think, are identical. Same. Old grizzled vets that are brought in to mentor their first round pick, because both Panthers and Houston are probably going to start fresh with rookie quarterbacks. I think that is the smartest thing to do as an organization, to bring in a veteran like that that's going to mentor them, get them ready quicker. And if they're not ready week one, you can still compete as a football team with those old guys starting for you.
I completely agree. I think signing Dalton, Keenum, any of these old guys, I actually thought that there was a chance that someone brought up in the Discord that maybe Matt Ryan stays with the Colts so he could do the same thing. But I think it's really smart to bring in guys like this, because when quarterbacks are watching film, they're watching film together, so they're doing this together, and having another quarterback that knows so much in the league, I think it's huge. And it makes me like those landing spots for rookies even more, knowing that they do have those veterans there. I hate it when someone like Zach Wilson goes to the Jets and his guy is like Joe Flacco, and like Joe Flacco's personality, right? So you could see how that could kind of not mesh out all that well. But Keenum seems like a great dude. Dalton seems like a great dude. So I love those. And then Taylor Heineke, I don't know, man. With him, Desmond Ridder, honestly, who's a better quarterback? I don't know. Desmond Ridder definitely has the better arm, without a doubt, because Heineke can't throw more than 25 yards down the field. But the dude just balls out. And so like coaches end up loving that, right? They're like, no, every time he's on the field, we have a chance to win. And so when that happens, maybe it does take a Desmond Ridder out of it when they think when Desmond Ridder's on the field, we're not going to win. And the coaching mindset has to go with, I want the quarterback that's going to help us win. So no, I completely agree that it's Desmond Ridder insurance there.
Yep. You mentioned good locker room guys. Greg in our chat here says the Broncos paid too much for Stidham. And I have mixed feelings on that, Mitch, because if you're a competitive football team, and I've been here before with the Dak and Romo days, and an injury comes, and if you don't have a good backup quarterback, things get ugly really quick. And if you really believe in your team in Denver, and I think they're trying to compete right away, especially with the Waltons and ownership and Sean Payton, hey man, Russ ain't getting any younger. He's had his moments and his issues. So I think they're hedging their bets a little bit and creating a little competition and competitive quarterback room. So, again, for the dynasty world, I think all these are just security blankets for what you have. And there's not much left on the market. I think we're waiting for the Baker Mayfield hat to drop there. We're here in Tampa Bay potentially. And Baker's got to probably be feeling good, because after him, there's Teddy Bridgewater, Gardner Minshew, maybe, but it's starting to really thin out. So if you didn't sign like a Jarrett Stidham, there's not many options to fall back on.
There's not. I mean, the only one like where everyone's waiting on, and I'm so sick of hearing it, is Aaron Rodgers, man. Like I am so sick of it. Like at this point, I don't care if he retires. I don't care if he goes to Jets. The only reason why I want him to go to the Jets is so I could trade him off every single one of my dynasty teams that I have him on, because he's like, this is going to be your value bump that you get, right? Like we all know this is going to happen every single offseason, but him going to the Jets, being with Garrett Wilson, being with the other playmakers, being with, Breece Hall, he's in such a good spot there. I think you're going to get a decent value bump. And I'm telling you, the second he gets traded, I'm moving every single share I have. I don't want him on my teams. I'm not dealing with this anymore, any offseason. Other managers can. I'm like, I'm out. Just give me. Honestly, if someone gave me the 201, I would trade Rodgers in every single league if I could get the 201 for him.
No challenge flags here. Mitch does not like the drama in Aaron Rodgers, but
Nope.
I think your big point too is, hey, that's when his stock is going to be at the highest.
Mm-hmm.
The hype's up there, all the weapons, the Jets, they're going for the Super Bowl. But if you could get something really solid that's going to help your dynasty roster, that's your time to sell before it becomes a Tom Brady and he's out. So with you, I probably should have mentioned that one before Baker Mayfield, but
You're good.
we have seen it to nauseum, and I think we kind of know it's going to happen. We're just waiting for them to pull the plug.
Yep.
That should have elevate Jordan Love. That should bury Zach Wilson. Maybe the mentorship of an Aaron Rodgers a year or two from now, Zach Wilson resurfaces. We'll see. Matty Ice was cut today, and I think that pretty much concludes the quarterback position. Yep. Unless you got anything else, Mitch, I'm going to switch to running backs.
I think that's not everybody, man.
But so, hey, good overview for our listeners there on the quarterback situation, everything that happened and where we're going. Running back activity surprisingly was not slow. Surprisingly, it was slow. It did pick up a little bit today. We knew Saquon and Pollard, the big names, went to the franchise, so that they returned to their teams. Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson both returned to Miami, so they've invested all of their money elsewhere, and they're pretty much saying, hey, it's the same old running back situation for us. Unless they draft somebody, maybe that goes into the mix. But I think otherwise, if you had Mostert and Wilson on the cheap last year, you're carrying it for another year, Mitch.
Yeah,
Sell them if you could.
That's how I kind of look at it. If I have those guys, especially Jeff Wilson's injured so much, I think his dynasty value is kind of shot. But if you have Mostert, I'm just happy if I have him on my team. He's not someone come August when we really start seeing running back values go higher and higher and higher. He's someone that I'm just not willing to ever put higher. What his value is now, probably mid to late second, is exactly what he'll be for me in August. He's just a dude, right? But he's good, but his value is never going to go up. You're never going to get a first round pick for him. He could go out and have 200 yards rushing each in the first 3 games of the season, right? His value is never going to be a first. So for me, I really like him when he's on my teams. And then also you have Matt Breida re-signing with the Giants. He's such a smart guy to get. Like if anything happens with Barkley, he's a guy that you could put in his lineup all the time, and he's just about free. I bet you when waivers start up, I know a lot of my leagues, waivers aren't even going right now. He's on a lot of waivers right now.
Yep, and that's the key. I think free is for me, as they say. So if you could get Matt Breida, it's a handcuff. It's, as of right now, the same situation in New York where there's no one else in that backfield. Again, we'll watch the draft, follow Dynasty Theory as we continue to put the pieces together. But right now, you get them for free. Now, as Mitch says, get them for free. Don't go trade no second-round picks or anything for Matt Breida. We've seen his body of work over a long period of time. He's just the guy that you get for free that helps you late. Mostert and Wilson, unfortunately, now aren't as cheap. But we talked about the value of second-round draft picks. If you could get them, because you get yourself a nice, young rookie that's going to give you, his entire first contract and become a good player versus Mostert and Wilson. Unless you're like all in it to win it, they're going to give you a year, 2 tops if you're lucky. It would be a good time to sell. Now, Rashad Penny goes to the Eagles. Boston Scott resigns. We know Kenneth Gainwell's there. Miles Sanders tweets goodbye today. He says, thank you, Philly. So I think he's given us that answer. What's your thoughts on the Eagles situation?
Rashad Penny's so good. Like, he is such a good running back that just can't stay healthy, right? But what happens if Penny stays healthy? Even in split work between Gainwell and Boston Scott, his value could actually rise, right? Because he is such a good guy. Everyone knows how talented he is. He's still pretty young. For me, he's just the guy that so far has signed as a running back that people don't buy running backs now. Like, no one goes out and trades for running backs in Dynasty right now because we know what could happen with the upcoming draft. But with Penny, it's, man, I could see fantasy glory with him on my team, right? So I'm having a really hard time pumping the brakes, be like, no, wait. Because I don't know about you, but I love Penny there.
Yeah, Mitch, as much as I'd love to throw the challenge flag on you because he's a Philadelphia Eagle, I can't. I think the ceiling could be one of those real surprisers. Like, just think if he runs between the tackles a little bit more than Miles Sanders does, and that Philadelphia O line's
Mhm.
very good. You got the Jalen Hurts factor. Like he just takes Miles Sanders production and gets you a little bit more, and
Right.
actually maybe for a change does not get hurt. Boy, a healthy Rashad Penny at a young age on a great team. There is a really nice ceiling that's attractive there. So that might be one of the really sneaky good plays.
Mhm.
You and I love our underdog best ball drafts. I think Penny
It's
could be
true.
a sneaky best ball guy. But for Dynasty, he's young. I think he's looking to prove it. And if he could do well, you might have yourself a gem. I think that kills the Trey Sermon theory. Maybe we were all
Oh,
kind of
same.
waiting to see
Yep.
where it went for the Trey Sermon truthers that don't look good for you.
Yeah.
And last one was Samaje Perine to the Broncos.
Yeah, same, man.
Same old, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I good depth piece, right? I mean, he's good. You don't know what's happened with Javonte Williams. At best, he's a third down back for him, right? Maybe you get a couple of games if Javonte's out for a little while. But I mean, he's not someone that I'm willing to go out and pay anything for, to be honest. If he's on my teams, cool. If he's not on my teams, I could really care less. I think honestly, what Samaje Perine brings every third down back on every NFL team pretty much brings the same thing. So for me, it's just kind of a non-mover.
yeah, I agree. And I think the biggest take I will pull from the many points you have on him is, hey, we have seen those reports that maybe they're a little nervous about Javonte not
Mhm.
being quite ready as quick as we have. Depending on how your roster is constructed in Dynasty, if you're a little weak at the running back, hey, if he buys you a few weeks early in the season to help you get a couple wins until you either get a Javonte
Mhm.
back or make a trade or get someone on the waiver wire, hey, the season's a marathon. Every win counts. So maybe some short-term value and some depth, as you mentioned. So running backs, again, not too exciting. It's starting to move.
Not
I think,
yet. It's
yeah, I was
gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It just hasn't happened yet.
that is the next eruption that I think we are definitely waiting for, Mitch. Like Montgomery, Miles Sanders, Madison, who's only 24 years old,
Mhm.
Singletary needs a home, Kareem Hunt, Damian Harris. You're praying Jamal Williams resigns. Deontay Foreman, I still like.
I like Foreman too. Same, man. Yep.
That there's a lot there. And
There
I
are.
think part of it moving slower is the draft this year is
It
so
is.
deep at running back, and we know how the running back landscape is. So they will fall. We will keep an eye on it. And I think that'll bring some big news, hopefully, for next week's episode. But the wide receiver position, kind of similar to running back, Mitch.
It's because there
Not
wasn't anybody. It was like, hey, name a free agent wide receiver. It's like, well, Jacoby Myers and um yeah, that might have been the only free agent available.
yeah, the landscape in itself is bad at the wide receiver position. But like we were going into tonight's like original show notes with I think
Yeah,
Sterling
it was
Shepard
rough,
resigned with the
man.
Giants. I was like, Mitch, is there anything here with wide
Yep.
receivers? Jacoby Myers did go to the Raiders. So again, maybe McDaniel's getting his guys,
Mhm.
former New England Patriot, heck of a slot player there. We're kind of a little curious what's going on with Hunter Renfrow and how they use these guys. But he was definitely probably the biggest name. I mean, maybe a little more firepower with the Raiders than New England, who definitely wants to grind it out. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But I don't know. Any interest move up for Jacoby Myers for you?
So, like, I love the player, right? And I actually think a big thing to always consider is when wide receivers go as free agents, either to the Patriots or to the Raiders now, they have a really hard time with the playbook. We see this constantly with free agents when they go to the Patriots. And I'm guarantee you we're probably going to see the exact same thing, outside of Devontae Adams because he's Devontae Adams. Like they have a really hard time being impactful on the field. We don't have to worry about that now because the Raiders are only signing expatriates, which never works out well. Like when Bill Belichick says, like, yeah, I don't want you on my team anymore, usually that's a really good sign of being, maybe we probably shouldn't sign this guy. But it's funny because they always go to like former Patriots coaches' teams, right? That's just where they end up.
And New England only has Thornton left at wide receiver,
Mm-hmm.
Tyron Thornton, and they have Hunter Henry at tight end. So they're saying they don't want Myers, and their cupboards are bare right now. So I'm really interested to see what direction they go in. But hey, there's an opportunity there for Myers to produce.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Alan Lazard. I believe he's officially a Jet.
I
I think,
guess, yeah, I guess he
I
is.
think we know where that's going. But I mean, to
I
me,
think,
I never liked Lazard really in the first place. I
right,
think he's
yeah,
okay. There's production there with Rodgers.
he's like fine, right? But what do you do? Denzel Mims is still there, right? Garrett Wilson's still there. Elijah Moore's still there. Like, I don't see how. Like, it's great that Rodgers is probably going there. Probably say, "Hey, I really love it if you'd sign Lazard." Lazard shouldn't see the field with those other guys on the team, right? But he's going to if Rodgers ends up there. It's just one of those guys to where I really hope no one buys into him for fantasy, even if he's like Rodgers is like, hey, he's my guy. He's my guy. Randall Cobb has been Rodgers' guy for the last 4 years, and it doesn't matter.
Yep. And I think with Lazard, again, we saw his best with the Green Bay, and it didn't take long for Watson and Romeo Dobbs and all those guys to just kind of make him just a football player, a good football player. But for dynasty purposes, that's all you're getting is wide receiver depth there. So we'll see. I think of the Elijah Moores of the world, and if he's not going back, we saw Josina Anderson's tweet there saying he's not involved in the trade. So we think Elijah Moore's coming back, and Garrett Wilson's a superstar. So I think they're definitely going to see a lot of love from Aaron Rodgers. That would be very fun to watch. Michael Thomas restructures his contract. He's like the stigma of dynasty and fantasy football right now. 1 year, $10 million, $15 million max. So there is some incentive. There's some new excitement with Derek Carr. Maybe he's finally healthy. Michael Thomas, you buying it all, Mitch?
Yeah. He's so good, right? And I actually think he fits Carr's skill set extremely well. I think it. So here is like my like big brain thought on it, right? If he's healthy, they don't have Kamara because Kamara's suspended for what's going on in Vegas. How many targets does Michael Thomas get? I mean, he could easily get 15 a game, and I don't think that's like exaggerating at all. I think that could happen each game until Kamara comes back with just how his skill set is. He has such a short, yardage, so it's really easy to pass to. So, I mean, he might only end up with 80 yards off of those targets, but that's what we care about in PPR. But saying that, I still don't know if I could buy into him because the fact is he's 30 now, right? It might even be 31. He's at the point to where if you get him on your dynasty teams, you can't get him off. And we see that right now with Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins. We see a lot of these guys to where, yeah, they can produce, but you're never moving them off your team. So if you do go out and be like, you know what, Michael Thomas is going to have a great early part of the season, I'm going to move him afterwards at the height of it. I just don't think that's actually feasible.
Yeah, I mean, if you could get something really good, the sell window's got a little momentum again with the signing the contract, the Carr news. But there's that like sweet spot, Mitch, where guys hit 29, 30, and like even Devontae Adams, who I love. I mean, he's one of the best in the game, but you start to get nervous. It's like, all right, I know that window's gonna come. It's coming. It's just a matter of time before you're stuck with him, and he's not producing what he is right now. So I think it's important to know with those kind of high caliber receivers when that sell window is. But he also is one of those guys where I just wouldn't give away because the ceiling is still there with Michael Thomas. The way he runs routes, I believe Olave is going to be their guy for a long time.
Right.
But they will squeeze everything out of Michael Thomas they can get as long as he's willing to give it. So there is production there to help win a league. So don't give them away. And the rest of the receiver landscape, as far as free agency, Sterling Shepard re-signs with the Giants on the cheap. There are some OBJ rumors, swirling again in New York a little bit. Noah Brown to Houston as a Cowboys fan. Don't put him on your dynasty teams. Philip Dorsett to the Raiders. That's an old New England guy again. Yeah. But he's been recycled so many times. It's just don't put him on your dynasty team either.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. We knew that this wide receiver group was really bad as far as free agency goes. I mean, we didn't even do a podcast about it. We did one for quarterbacks and one for running backs, so we weren't going to do one for wide receivers because there's not a lot there you could actually talk about us outside of Myers. So for me, these are all decent role players on their team, but no one that I'm actually willing to be like, hey, that's awesome. Now, the tight end position. I was going to say, okay, you're putting the finger up. Hold on.
Just one final thought. I guess what I'd be watching on the receiver position moving forward, and it's really not a lot. Juju, I mean, he's a role player. I'm not too excited anymore in Dynasty.
Oh,
But
wait. We have news.
we got
have
some
news.
breaking news.
The Lions are signing former Bears running back David Montgomery because this should include because they hate DeAndre Swift. Like, the Lions hate him. Like, this just flat out goes out.
Wow.
They hate DeAndre Swift. Like, there's no other way you could even look at it. Wow. They hate DeAndre Swift.
So let's think about that. This is not in our show notes. We did not expect that big bomb dropping tonight. That brings a lot of concern for all of Detroit there. One, so we know this offseason, we hear their running back coach, Detroit, say we believe in a 3 running back system, which we hate in fantasy football. Mm-hmm. But, we still were able to see enough production from Jamal Williams last year with DeAndre Swift. Swift had some moments, but he had health issues as he always does. Detroit's 3rd running back has always been irrelevant. Like, I don't think Craig Williams is ever kind of, other than taking a few carries there, Justin Jackson a little bit late. So Detroit now is saying, okay, we still have DeAndre Swift. To your point, they must hate him. They definitely they definitely hate him for our dynasty purposes. That's a fact. David Montgomery's good. That was one of the guys, like, other than Miles Sanders, that was the biggest name I think out there. Is Jamal gone?
Jamal has to be gone. I mean, because they'll do the exact same role, right? I mean, I would assume that I want to really see what the contract is, because it kind of makes me wonder if Jamal was asking too much or if there just wasn't a market for Montgomery and he took a lot less to go there. Because what Montgomery does is exactly what Jamal does well. It's a 3-year deal worth $18 million is what Ian Rappaport just said. So, I mean, that's a decent contract. He's there for at least 2. So if that's the case, that's telling me, I talked to John about this on one of the pivot points. I'm not going to be shocked if they trade Swift. And this isn't just me being like the Lions guy. Oh, they hate Swift, blah, blah. There's a lot of smoke there, man. There's been smoke there since Hard Knocks last season. It's weird. So I don't know. What do you think about it? So you're on the outside looking in on this. My love for Swift. I have 2 of his jerseys right here on my right-hand side, right? So I don't know.
If I'm going to play the Hard Knocks card on the outside looking in, DeAndre Swift reminds me of O.J. Howard. And this is a weird comparison because running back, tight end. But we all know O.J. Howard was a freak of an athlete, really highly touted out of Alabama. I remember watching a Hard Knocks, or I think it was Hard Knocks. There was something behind-the-scene clip in the spirit of that where the coach was talking to him and being like, dude, you've got so much talent. But you knew the coaches were frustrated because it just wasn't coming out of them. So we watch Hard Knocks with the Lions, and you hear the coaches talking, like, he's got talent, but there's like always that but. So at some point, that patience is going to run out, especially at the running back position. And if the best ability is availability, and you're not always hitting the hole, and you're not always healthy, they're not going to keep paying you. So once that rookie contract's done, hey, what does he have left? What year is he in right now?
I think he has 1 more year, if I remember right.
So it's moving. It's moving quick, and they got themselves covered with Montgomery. I think Jamal Williams will be a big piece to watch.
Oh, I think
if
so.
they do bring him back, then I think Swift is just a matter of time. Like, what are they doing? And then if that is the 3-headed monster, then that kind of stinks because all 3 of those could run, and somebody's definitely getting sniped you're going to play a guessing game all year. That's like those old New England Patriots running back situations where we were guessing every week who would be the guy to get the touches. It's going to be very hard to predict in Detroit. So that could be a killer.
So I have a question. Let's say going into the season, it's DeAndre Swift and David Montgomery on the team, right? DeAndre Swift's probably going to be drafted a little bit higher. But at cost, who are you actually going to want on your best ball teams and your dynasty teams? Are you going to want Montgomery or are you going to want Swift?
I'm definitely going to want David Montgomery. I think he's a better running back than Jamal Williams, who's a very good football player.
Yep.
But he's younger, and I mean, he does a lot. So I would definitely want Monte. I think I don't trust DeAndre Swift. Great, and if Monty gets that Jamal Williams role because he is gone, that's a potential for a lot of production on a good team for David Montgomery.
I'm glad we had that. I'm glad we had some news on here.
Man, we're just getting spoiled, Mitch. We were a little worried, and the slow news it ramped up, and now we get
Mhm.
shocking news. I hope JB's enjoying that pick game because he would have loved that one. So 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 we will. Oh, so we were just. I was before the news came in. I was just saying wide receiver, watching Juju. DJ Shark. Speaking of the Lions, I'm curious kind of where he goes. He just seems
Yep.
to have some juice left wherever he lands. My boy McCole Hardman, I'm intrigued. I'm probably biased and need to take the goggles off, but he's
A
just
little
a
bit.
fast dude, man. They in the right opportunity, Mitch, there could be some fantasy production there, and he's still young. Paris Campbell, I don't know that's getting really thin, but it just dives from there.
It
The
does.
Darius
Yeah.
Slaytons
Yeah.
and so forth. So just a few names to watch. Tight end. The position was dead.
We didn't care about any of it.
Like not only like we didn't care, nothing was happening. There's a few names there, but unless you count Hunter Long to the Rams, which I don't,
Mhm.
he's kind of dynasty wise done to me. Blocking tight end Josh Oliver to the Vikings means nothing. It's the Hawkinson show there. He's just a role player. So again, I wouldn't put him on a dynasty team. Jonnu gets traded to the Falcons. I don't know if that's more bad news for Kyle Pitts. He gets reunited with Coach Arthur Smith, but I don't think we're going to ever see much from Jonnu Smith. But it was dead until Darren Waller got traded to the New York Giants. Big time weapon if healthy. What's your take there?
Dude, I love it. I love it so much. Like, that's a guy that, like, as long as he can stay healthy, right? So that's like the big caveat with him. But if he can stay healthy, he is so good, and it's exactly what the Giants need. They just didn't have the guy they could go to in crunch time. We've seen all the highlights to where Daniel Jones is throwing a slant pass, the dude just drops it, and it's like at the goal line, or it's a fourth down. And Daniel Jones, you could just see he's like, dude, just catch the ball. And Darren Waller, I mean, as far as if he could stay healthy, and it's hard in Dynasty because you're talking a little bit more about age. We have all the newer tight ends coming in this draft that we all love. It's really hard to raise his value there. But anybody playing in a best ball, Waller's pretty high for me right now. I mean, he's probably top 5 or top 6, but like he's cemented there for me now where I'm willing to draft him. And now I'm willing to trade for him. I even tried to trade for him in Dynasty today. I offered, let's see, I think it was Christian Watson for him, and I got turned down.
Ooh.
Yeah, right? It was like,
did you say you got turned down?
I got turned down.
Or did you not hear anything yet?
No, got turned down.
Really?
Right? I know. So
That's a great offer, Mitch.
yeah. So, and I know
a fair one. That's I think a win-win offer because I mean tight end premium. I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's fair. So I was kind of shocked it didn't go through. But you have in the notes Foster Moreau season. Do you think he resigns with the Raiders? Do you think they just like immediately bring him back now?
Yeah, so my thoughts there. I will mention Kevin in the chat saying Waller wide receiver one.
Right?
I think he is their de facto, de facto wide receiver one in New York, and he is just a weapon. Foster Moreau, like for the Raiders to make this move outside of whatever we're seeing on Twitter about Coach McDaniels announcing the wedding before it was supposed to be announced, and Darren Waller was mad. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. And, player and head coaches don't get along anymore, but it wasn't working last year. The health was an issue with Waller. When you do watch the tape and you know what he could do, like he's just not a normal athlete. Like he does what other tight ends and receivers can't do. He is a weapon, and with good coach in the Giants, I think he's going to be great. So for the Raiders to do that, I'm left scratching my head. I'm thinking, okay, we got Devontae Adams there. They signed Jacoby Myers. Garoppolo comes in. They're building this thing, and then they trade Waller. It's like, whoa, where all the momentum was like deflated in the tires there. They have to believe in Foster Moreau. I think they've got to be saying, and I think his contract has something to do with that. They're looking at their salary cap and saying, hey, we got a guy that we think we can produce at tight end. He's a lot cheaper, a lot younger.
Right now he's a free agent, so they have to sign him. So now does he come in and be like, hey, I want $7 million a year instead of the $5 million a year?
What's the market going to be though for Moreau versus what it be for
No, I agree, man.
And I think we play DFS a little bit on the side there, and I don't know how many times I went with Moreau thinking,
oh dude, I played
Waller's
him so much
out. This is the system, and he just let me down all the time. Like
every once in a while, he give you the touchdown. You're like, all right, well at least that paid off.
You get the bare minimum, like the typical tight end market there, but it never really took off for me. So I know the Raiders were always high on him. I remember Adam Schefter. He was a Shefty sleeper the one year with like some insider tips that he
Mhm.
had. So, hey, if there's ever going to be an opportunity and you can still buy him low, I think you do that in Dynasty. And he just fixed into that mix of, those other tight ends that you're hoping for a touchdown and 3-4 catches in a tight end premium, and you got some production maybe. But that would be it there for the tight end position for me, Mitch. I think, who else is out there? We got Schultz has got to land somewhere. I'm a little
Yeah.
worried outside of the Dallas system, although that was a Kellen Moore system,
Mhm.
but I think Gerald Everett cemented there. Irv Smith is still young. He's a free agent. Gesicki, even though he's not really a blocker, he's kind of a poor man, very poor man's Waller. Hayden Hurst, Robert Tanyan. There's some names.
Yeah, exactly. Their names. I mean, that none of these are guys that are gonna be like, oh, hey, they signed, I'm gonna go trade for him. But maybe they could be a blocking point for where a rookie is gonna go. Maybe if they get decent money, maybe that team will draft a rookie instead or keeps that rookie off the field. So that's about the only thing I care about with those guys.
Agreed, Mitch. I think now we're waiting for the draft. There's some more free agents to sign. We're going to watch this landscape. I think our listeners need to keep tuning in. But for now,
final thoughts.
I almost timed it right. I was off by a second.
Hey, we didn't get to practice. So what do you got, man? Final thoughts. Where's this all taking you tonight?
All right. So here's my final thought because I see it brought up all the time. I keep hearing the salary cap doesn't matter because of so-and-so being signed, because Derek Carr was able to sign with the Saints. Tell me who else the Saints are signing. That's the thing, is like teams can always find room for one player. They could always negotiate contracts. Look at the Rams right now. We saw this coming with the Rams. We knew they were selling the future. Well, now it's time to pay the piper. Who have the Rams brought in? They can't pay anybody. And this is what happens with teams is they could sell and sooner or later it catches up. This year's the year that it's catching up for the Rams. The Saints get probably pushed off for another year or two. But I mean, these salary caps do matter. It does end up coming to effect. It's not just every team can afford the one high price player. But after that, is the middle of your team the worrying point? And that's my worry with like the Saints now, right? Is they did bring in Carr, but how's their offensive line going to be? How are they going to replace Kamara's production? Is Michael Thomas and Chris Olave going to be like the only players they have? And Juwan Johnson is the hype tight end this year. It's worrying because that team's just not as good as what it was. And that's what you have to worry about when it comes to salary cap.
That's a good one. And being that we've got, and we're going to be a little bit shorter tonight, but being that JB gave us some time back, I could give a counter to the final thought and say, I think with a franchise like the Saints, because of those salary cap kicking it down the line a little bit, the margin for error is much smaller. I think they're a little more fortunate to the Rams right now, and that they've got some more pieces and they've got hope, but they can't afford the injuries because the depth's not there, and they hope to hit in their draft. And I think that's the really big thing. Once the Rams stopped hitting all those gems in the draft, those late round picks, and then they got some injuries, and then all of a sudden you can't sign anybody, it goes away, and it went away pretty quick for them. So yeah, salary cap's fun to watch, man. And it's just really interesting to see how the organizations do it. We all want them to spend, and we know the owners got the money, but you got to do it craftily because it could go away fast and lend itself to not good fantasy situation. So we will see. Man, my closing thoughts is just defense. We didn't talk about defense.
So much defense, man.
There was a lot. And I think I'm intrigued by like the landscape of free agency too. We see like the running backs and receivers kind of dime a dozen, not big names out there, but these competing teams really place heavy emphasis on defense and O-line. I shouldn't leave out the hog mollies again. So important to Dynasty. We don't get into it much in our podcast because it's not what scores fantasy points.
Right.
But, keep an eye in our Discord, join our Patreon. We got an IDP channel in there where the guys are looking at for their individual draft position leagues where, again, Dynasty production comes with offensive lines, protecting their players and re-signing guys. And so there's been a lot of moves on the offensive line, a lot of defensive line signings. My boy signing Stephon Gilmore today. That Dallas defense just got a lot more lockdown. I'm so excited about that. So again, we're not going to get into defense tonight, but that and O-line, I'll be ranking O-line as we get closer to the season, and my dysfunctional rankings will be coming out, but that's where I'm looking a little more at O-line and defense and how these teams are building and constructing their rosters.
Perfect, man. I think that summed it up great. I mean, offensive line matters so much. When I go into thinking about quarterbacks now, my first question is like, yeah, but how's the offensive line?
Right? Hey, Mitch, on my side iPad here, the Rangers, the whole third period was during our show. They won 5-3, and I won on DraftKings tonight, so they better sponsor us. I don't know.
Perfect. Well
night,
done,
man.
man. We even snuck DraftKings in there. I love it.
All good. Hey, to our listeners, thank you for listening, man. For Dino MC, FF Coach Dan, it's been a pleasure tonight. We'll see you in our chat and back again next week.